First of all, I'm only here because of Fred Gardefe, who was my classmate at Fenwick High School.
High school, go Friars.
48 years ago. And being a professor of French, even though I'm Calabrese Americano, he said, dude, send the proposal in. Because I said, this is not my field. I don't know what I'm doing. You know, especially after hearing the wonderful presentations the session before. But Fred said, send it off, and it got accepted, so you're stuck with me for the next 20 minutes. I want to look at what Nina has done from a micro level, and I'm really interested in talking to you guys afterwards because my last study was mixed language use, English and French, among French West African engineers working for multinational companies. So we have some real parallels there, and I see some possibilities with doing the same type of study in the United States if it hasn't been done so far. So what I want to look at a micro level is the struggle to recapture, and it's a misnomer to say Italian language skills because only my grandfather spoke Italian because he served in the Italian army during the Turkish-Italian War of 1911-1912. It's basically Calabrese skills, which I only have two uncles in their late 80s who will die with those skills until I go back to Italy at age 66 and stay there for like a summer and learn Calabrese because I don't know it. The reason why I teach Italian is because my department at San Diego State lost its tenure-track faculty member, and they said, hey, you got the Italian name, you got to go back. I said, I don't speak Italian. I started learning Italian at age 47. I didn't go to Italy for the first time until 48 because I focused on French because Italian wasn't offered at Fenwick High School, it wasn't offered at my undergraduate institution. And so I focused on French, and I can remember my nonno saying, well, you focus on the francese. Sei pazzo. And you know, I said, because nobody's teaching Italian, you know, like they do here. So basically that's what I want to talk about, a little anatomy of my own particular family. As all of you know, the conditions in Calabria, and we're talking about the time, 1914, when my grandfather emigrates. My family were all sharecroppers working for Count Leone Capurro of Catanzaro, a northerner who was rewarded by the king for his work in Italian independence. 18 and 20-hour work days, cholera, malaria, the disease. My grandfather got out of that by joining the Italian army to fight the Turks. That's how bad things were at that particular time. And still at that time, Briganti, in fact, I have a great-great-great-grandfather who was listed in the Stato delle Anime as a Brigante. So my grandfather is actually Brigante when it comes to America. But basically, the Brigante are still very possible. Here's the cast of characters, first generation. Cesare Sacco, my grandfather, born in Migliarina, which is at the narrowest point of the peninsula in the provincia di Catanzaro. He emigrates in 1914 without his wife. And he starts a business. No Italian started a business as a sharecropper, but he was also the tax collector. And the myth is that he ran off with the tax collections to start his own business. My grandmother only comes in 1920 because she hears that my nonno has an Irish family in Chicago. And so she comes in 1920 and she kicks out the Irish family members and they reconnect. Lucia. So when I see that you guys are talking about wonderful, you know, I want to be the John Fante of Calabrese. Lucia Sacco comes in later after my nonna dies when I was only 3 months old. She comes from the Veneto, so they have to speak Italian. Finally, they're speaking Italian, and I'm hearing that. So the second generation, my father was Carmen Sacco, and notice a lot of these names have been Americanized as part of assimilation, and which, you know, to me is the dirtiest word in the English language because it kept me from being a native speaker of either Calabrese or of Italian. Here's my generation. I'm the first grandchild, born in 1952, even though I know you were saying you look a lot younger. My cousins also, we all lived together. My grandfather owned 2 homes. And so my grandfather lived a couple blocks away. two generations of us lived in the same house that he owned. Fourth generation, these are our children. Richard, who's at Georgetown learning Arabic, even though he took one semester of Italian, but he wants to learn Calabrese really badly. My daughter Rachel is learning Spanish and Native American languages because that's her interest. She's not interested in Italian whatsoever. So here's the impact of assimilation, American version of Italian names. My grandmother was Josefina Cittadino, but as soon as she comes to America, she's forced to change that to Josephine Sacco. Josephine. I still, my Nonna is my guardian angel. And I still talk to her as Josefina, or as Pina, not as Josephine Sacco. The drive to become American, Cesare becomes a U.S. citizen in 1962. He masters English because he owned 3 businesses during his lifetime. Ensuring children that speak English, so there's a declining emphasis on speaking Calabrian dialect right from the very beginning. Even though my Nonna didn't speak Italian or English, she only spoke dialect. And minimal trips back to Italy. My grandfather only went back in 1959 when they forgot that he had stolen the tax revenues, and so he came back after that. We come from Chicago's West Side, Italian community there. Mass and confession was in Italian. We had a lot of Calabrese, Pugliese, etc. We had our own stores. We have our own clubs, kind of like Ligon Street here, which is really great. Cesare, as I mentioned, was an entrepreneur working in English, but also in Italian or Italian dialect. And Giuseppina stayed at home, and she only spoke dialect with the children. So you all know the evils of assimilation, at least in my book. In the United States in 1930, 90% spoke Italian or dialect. Now it's down to 5%. I'll just skip over that because I know I'm going to be running out of time. The key identifying question that is only understood in Chicago is, what are you?
What are you?
You know, if you ask somebody in say like Springfield, Illinois, what are you? Oh, I'm a human being. We asked that because we needed to determine who was going to be an in-group and out-group. Because I was very tight because we lived with Mexicans, Polish people, African Americans. We all had our own gangs, and we were constantly like Greek city-states at war with each other. So Italian, Polish, Lithuanian, that's what people would say. Only we would call white people because on, you know, how for job interviews, it's a Caucasian, we put olive. Because we're not white people, we're not Irish, we're not, we're Italians, we're olive. And so we'd say, I'm Calabrese, I'm Napolitan, which when I went back to language school in Florence, the teacher said, Stefano, non si pronuncia Napolitano, Napolitano. So we would identify ourselves as Italians only to non-Italians. So we refer to each other as, here's my Siciliano friend, here's my Calabrese friend, here's my friend from Basilicata, or whatever. So language is the first generation. Cesare was the multilingual guy, spoke Italian because of his work in the Italian army, Calabrian dialect, probably in English, a B2 speaker with very, very heavily accented English. Giuseppina only spoke Calabrese dialect, and that's all she spoke with her children. Language at home, look at this figure here. This is just an estimation, but my father and my uncles and aunts heard Calabrese dialect 75% of the time, and 25% English, but only when it comes to production output, only 75% or only 25% Calabrian dialect, 75% English. Okay, and none of them spoke Italian. As I'll tell you the story, when I took my uncles to Rome, I was the only one who can rent a car and order a meal. But when we got to Calabria, they went crazy, and I was the outsider speaking Italian. So for me, I'm kind of a half-breed. I'm half Calabrese. My mother was Dutch, Irish, or English and German, and she was a Protestant. So 3 strikes because of against my mother. She smoked, she was non-Italian, and she was Protestant. Okay? So then I got sent to military school because I had, a few difficulties as a youngster along with my other cousins. So I was sent to a residential military school with some Italians, and we all hung together. But basically, it was for 8 years with non-Italian speakers. So for me, language is spoken at home, 99% English, 1% Calabrese dialect. Now, they would speak Calabrese to keep secrets from us. We created our own language to keep secrets from our parents and our uncles and aunts. So, and then, we have plenty of Calabrian words in our mixed dialect from Chicago. Mama Luke, hey, that guy's a Mama Luke. Turk. You say that to an Italian in Italy now, they don't know what a Mama Luke is. Or he's a Juch, he's Asino, un Chucho, un Chuchu, un Strunz. So my friends in Florence would make fun of me by saying Strunz instead of Stronzo. So they would use the Calabrese. The guy's a Stunata. The guy Bacaz was our bathroom because it was at the end of our house. So vado alla Bacaz, I'm going to the back of the house, the bathroom, and of course everybody knows Stugats from. So there's plenty of Stugats that we would say when we were fighting each other. Okay, so here's Steve. No language courses offered in high school or college. French major, Spanish minor, high school teacher, French professor, no visits until age 48, focus on France and French, background in romance linguistics, totally going the wrong direction. So what did I do? At age 47, I had that, my nonna, my guardian angel, was whispering in my ear, telling me to go back to the roots, like the salmon going back up the stream. So I studied living language on my own now it's online, for 2 years until I got the equivalent of 4 years of classroom Italian. My department sent me to the Scuola Leonardo da Vinci in Florence, where I placed in the advanced Italian courses in the summer of 2003. Beginning in 2004, I had to teach Italian, and I'm a French teacher. So the last 10 years of my career, I'm teaching Italian. 25% of my students are just like me. They want to recapture their roots. So after that, I decided, being in a classroom with 12 people and you're like this, I decided to get a tutor 4 hours a day who gave me customized language instruction to help me out. Okay? Now, my family and I, we go on Facebook, and we know our family back in Milgarina, so we're constantly communicating back and forth. And I would use those conversations in my Italian classes so that they could see, who my family was, but also see some cool things. I had my students, for one example, get on an Italian dating site and find a Calabrese girl that they could hook up with. So all the instructions, of course, were in Italian.
A lot of motivation.
And so, instead of studying, ERE verbs, we decided to try to get a Calabrese girlfriend in class. And so when they hooked up, then they got an A for the assignment. So as I said, I taught Italian at San Diego State for 10 years. At the end, they allowed me to teach business Italian because I was also director of the International Business Program at San Diego State. So estimated maybe B2 speaker in Italian, totally A1 beginner in Calabrese dialect. So I take my uncles back to the stream. And so, again, they could not, I'm thinking, you guys said that you knew Italian. And so I had to do everything for them in Italian until we got to back home and we met our cousins, and it went perfectly, except he drank all my cousins' homemade wine, which was kind of a problem, but they spoke dialect the whole time, and I was the outsider. Because my cousins hearing Italian in a Calabrese type of format was not something that they were expecting to do. They speak it just like, a lot of times the Irish will speak English, but will speak Gaelic within the home. So that really shook me up to knowing how much they actually got. Other family members, my son took a semester of elementary Italian. We're both seeking dual citizenship. Other than that, my family wants to learn dialect. They don't want to learn Italian. Okay? We're still heavily acculturated as Italian Americans, even though my family doesn't speak Italian. So future goals: get dual citizenship, purchase a house in Migliarina, because my cousin has 4 hectares, 3-story house for $60,000. Because nobody from the north wants to go there. Okay? Learn Calabrese dialect. So what I hope to do, with my wife's permission in the back of the room there, is to spend maybe a month or 2 with family members who have invited me to stay at their house. And at some point, since I am an applied linguist, I would love to create a grammar of Calabrian dialect, and grammar of Calabrian dialect that is spoken now, because my grandfather probably could not communicate a lot with his family with Calabrian dialect, being influenced by Albanese and some other dialects from Eastern Europe. So those are my plans, and hopefully see you guys in New York and Geneva. But if you're interested in the type of research where we're trying to look at language use in the workplace or language use among Italians, please contact me. We'd love to do that.
Thank you very much.